Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. In 1942, a Viennese psychiatrist was arrested by the Gestapo. He was stripped of everything: his name, his identity, his work, his freedom. He was transported to Auschwitz, then to other camps. He lost his wife, his brother, his parents. He watched people die around him every day. And in the middle of all of that, in the most extreme suffering a human being can endure, he made an observation that would eventually sell 16 million copies and change how the world understands the relationship between suffering and meaning. His name was Viktor Frankl, and what he discovered in those camps was not a formula for happiness or a strategy for success or a system for productivity. It was something far more fundamental: a reason to live, and a philosophy that says you can find one no matter what is happening to you. Today, I'm breaking down Man's Search for Meaning, 6 lessons from this book that I genuinely believe are more important than anything else I've covered on this channel. Context: Viktor Frankl was born in Vienna in 1905. By the time the Nazis came for him, he was already a respected psychiatrist with a developing theory he called logotherapy, from the Greek logos, meaning meaning. His core idea was that the primary human drive is not pleasure or power, but the search for meaning. The camps tested that idea in ways no laboratory ever could. The book is in 2 parts. Part 1 is Frankl's account of his experiences in Auschwitz and 3 other camps. Raw, precise, unflinching. Part 2 is the theoretical framework he developed from those experiences: logotherapy and what it teaches us about how to live. The book was written in 9 days after liberation. Frankl initially published it anonymously because he didn't think it would be published under his own name. He was wrong. It became one of the most influential books of the 20th century, named by the Library of Congress as one of the 10 most influential books in the United States. What strikes you most when you read it is not the horror, although there is horror. It is the clarity, the precision with which Frankl observed human behavior under impossible conditions, and the conclusions he drew about what kept some people going when everything else was gone. Let's get into the 6 lessons. Lesson 1. Meaning can be found in any circumstance. In the camps, Frankl observed something that stunned him as a scientist and humbled him as a human being. Prisoners in identical circumstances, same food, same cold, same brutality, same daily proximity to death, responded in radically different ways. Some descended into moral collapse. They stole from fellow prisoners, cooperated with guards for small privileges, abandoned every ethical principle they had held. Others gave away their last piece of bread, walked through the huts offering a kind word, chose dignity in situations specifically designed to strip it away. Frankl concluded that even in a concentration camp, even there, a person had a choice. Not a choice about their circumstances, not a choice about their suffering, but a choice about who they would be in relation to that suffering. And if meaning could be found there, Frankl argued, it can be found anywhere. Not easily, not automatically, but always, as a possibility, available. Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms: to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. Viktor Frankl. Lesson 2. The last human freedom: choosing your response. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space lies our freedom. In that space lies our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. This formulation, often attributed to Frankl, though the exact wording was developed by Stephen Covey drawing on Frankl's ideas, captures something Frankl observed directly in the camps. The guards had total power over the prisoners' bodies. They had no power over the prisoners' inner lives, unless the prisoners gave it to them. Frankl watched men who were physically broken but spiritually intact, and he watched men who had every physical advantage but had surrendered their inner freedom completely. He came to believe that the space between what happens to us and how we respond to it is the final territory of human freedom. It cannot be legislated away, cannot be imprisoned, cannot be destroyed, only abandoned voluntarily. The practice: when something triggers you, before you react, find the space. it exists. It's always there. Your job is to use it. Lesson 3. A reason to live changes everything. Frankl noticed that the prisoners most likely to survive, those who maintained their psychological integrity longest, who kept their will to live when conditions were designed to extinguish it, were those who had something to live for. Not something abstract, something specific, a person to return to, a work not yet completed, a child they had to see again, a manuscript they had hidden before deportation, a mission not yet fulfilled. He cites Nietzsche. He who has a why to live for can bear almost any how. Friedrich Nietzsche. Frankl saw this proved in the most brutal imaginable conditions. The loss of hope, the loss of a future, was lethal. Not metaphorically, literally. He describes watching men who had given up within days of the event they had been holding on for, a date, a reunion, an anniversary that came and went. The reverse was equally true. A man with a clear reason to live, a why that was his and no one else's, could endure extraordinary suffering. The question Frankl leaves you with, what is your why? Not a career goal or a financial target, something deeper, something that would still matter if everything else was taken away. Lesson 4. 3 paths to meaning. Frankl identified 3 distinct ways through which a person can find meaning in their life. The first is through what we give to the world. Creative values, the work we do, the things we make or build or contribute. A teacher who changes a student's life. A builder who makes something that outlasts them. An entrepreneur who creates something that didn't exist before. Meaning through doing. The second is through what we receive from the world. Experiential values, love, beauty, truth. The meaning found in a deep relationship, in encountering art that moves you, in standing before a mountain or a piece of music and feeling genuinely small. Meaning through experiencing. The third, and Frankl believed it to be the most profound, is through how we face suffering we cannot avoid. Attitudinal values. When we are confronted with something we cannot change, cannot escape, cannot fix, our last freedom is how we bear it. The person who suffers with dignity, who faces the unavoidable with courage and without self-pity, who transforms personal tragedy into something human and meaningful, that person has found meaning in the hardest possible place. Lesson 5. Suffering is not the enemy of meaning. This is the lesson that is hardest to hear and the most important one to sit with. Frankl does not say that suffering is good. He does not say we should seek it out or embrace it with cheerfulness. He is not offering toxic positivity dressed in philosophical language. What he says is more precise and more demanding than that. He says that suffering which cannot be avoided is not necessarily meaningless, that what we do with unavoidable suffering, how we respond to it, what we allow it to teach us, whether we let it expand or collapse us, is itself a form of meaning-making. He draws a distinction between suffering that has a purpose and suffering that doesn't. Pointless suffering, suffering that could be removed, that serves no function, should be relieved. That is what medicine and compassion are for. But unavoidable suffering, the loss that cannot be undone, the illness that cannot be cured, the grief that must be lived through, can be the site of some of the deepest human meaning. If there is a meaning in life at all, then there must be a meaning in suffering. Viktor Frankl. This is not comfort. It is something harder and more honest than comfort. It is the suggestion that even the worst things that happen to us are not automatically wasted if we do not waste them. Lesson 6. Don't aim at success. Aim at meaning. The last lesson in this book is the one that connects everything Frankl discovered in the camps to the question most of us are actually living with. Not, how do I survive? But, what am I actually doing this for? Frankl's answer is one of the most direct inversions of conventional self-help thinking you will ever encounter. Don't aim at success. The more you aim at it and make it a target, the more you are going to miss it. Viktor Frankl. Success, he argues, cannot be pursued. It can only result. It results as a byproduct of something else, from devotion to a purpose greater than yourself, from dedication to a person you love, from commitment to a cause worth serving. The person who sets out to be successful will find that the harder they chase it, the more elusive it becomes. Because success is not a destination, it is a consequence. It is what happens when you stop chasing it and start serving something that matters. Frankl is talking about a fundamental reorientation of how we relate to our own lives. Not, what do I want to get, but what is the world asking of me? Not, how do I achieve, but what am I here to do? This connects directly to everything else on this channel. Rich Dad, Poor Dad tells you how to build financial freedom. The Psychology of Money explains why we self-sabotage. The Alchemist asks what your personal legend is. Man's Search for Meaning asks the question underneath all of those. Why do any of it? What is it in service of? Frankl's answer: find something worth serving, something outside yourself, something that would still matter if you were stripped of everything else. That is where meaning lives. And meaning, he proved in the most extreme possible circumstances, is what keeps us alive. Recap: 6 lessons from Man's Search for Meaning. Lesson 1. Meaning can be found in any circumstance. It is always available as a choice. Lesson 2. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. That space is your final freedom. Lesson 3. A reason to live changes everything. He who has a why can bear almost any how. Lesson 4. Meaning comes through creating, experiencing, and how we face unavoidable suffering. Lesson 5. Suffering is not the enemy of meaning. Unavoidable suffering can become its source. Lesson 6. Don't aim at success, aim at meaning. Success follows. It cannot be directly pursued. I want to say something about why I wanted to cover this book specifically on this channel. Every other book I've covered here answers the question, how? How do I build wealth? How do I change my habits? How do I make people like me? How do I find my path? Viktor Frankl asks the question underneath all of those. Why? Why are you building the wealth? Why are you changing the habits? Why does the path matter? Without an answer to that question, every how becomes hollow sooner or later. And with an answer, with a genuine, personal, deeply felt reason to keep going, almost any how becomes bearable. This is the book that makes all the others matter. Man's Search for Meaning is a short book. You can read it in a sitting. But I'd recommend reading it slowly, with space between the chapters, because it asks things of you that take time to answer. And I genuinely think it's one of those books that rewards rereading. At different ages, in different circumstances, it will land differently every time. If you're new to the channel, the links in the description also go to my summaries of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, The Psychology of Money, The Alchemist, The Millionaire Next Door, and How to Win Friends and Influence People. I'd recommend starting wherever the title speaks to where you are right now. Subscribe for a new book breakdown every week. And leave a comment. What is your why? I'm genuinely asking. I'd love to read what you write, and I reply to every single one. See you in the next one.